The fly we're doing today is a little gray nymph. I don't know how productive it is. We picked this fly because it introduces you guys to dubbing. We use dubbing a lot. The materials that we're using today are a combination of some gray Antron yarn, or dubbing material, and some light hare's mask. If I had more time today, I would have mixed some of that up here. We use a coffee grinder to do a lot of dubbing mixing. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it kind of clumps. I've got packets out here. Fortunately, there's still a couple left. If you run out, we've got materials here. I've got some gray at the Antron sparkle dubbing, and I've got another pack of the natural fur light colored hare's ear. The mix is about 3 to 1. Gray Antron, 1 and 3 parts of the hare's ear. And I've got some that's ready to mix up. If you read the booklet, it does mix up pretty easily by hand. You just kind of move it around and upside down and inside out until the gray is pretty well mixed. You don't want to see large clumps of gray. You want to mix it up so it's spread pretty evenly around that. This fly is a sinker, so we're using 20/100 lead on this to make sure it does sink. Dubbing is no more than, it's a method by which we attach material to thread. For some flies, they use what they call a dubbing wax. We have a few tubes of it for sale. Chapstick, the original, kind of works the same way. You kind of spread that on the line, and it helps that dubbing attach. But for this particular fly, I don't recommend that you use dubbing wax because you want the final product to look kind of bristly and buggy. And if you use dubbing wax, it has a tendency to kind of gunk it up. So on this fly, I recommend that we not use it. There won't be much of a head on this. What did I do with my examples? Did I lay them out? I don't know what I did with them. Well, like I'm going to tie one and show you the process, and then we'll go back and we'll tie another one step by step. I think you're going to find the challenge is you always have a tendency to put way, way, way too much material on your thread. So if you think you got a small amount, cut it in half. And I'll give you an idea of how we do that. But the first step is going to be put some lead on so this sucker will sink. And I will do that. You guys should have that down pat by now. So I'm going to put that behind, wrap some. I'm going to put, the 20/100. This is a fairly long hook shank. I'm probably going to have 12 or so wraps. Like I've done before, I'm going to tag in. I'm going to try and compress that and get it on my hook so that I don't waste any of it and I don't make great big lumps. And we're going to have to get that so it doesn't slide up and down on the hook. So I'm going to start wrapping behind the lead. I'm going to hold my thread at a 45 and wrap over that so I know I've got it snagged good. Then I can get rid of that tag end. And if once you get in those wraps, you know, your thread will follow them automatically. I'm going to close that in just a little bit, okay? And I'm going to wrap further forward than I would. I'm going to wrap right down to the back of the eye, but I'm going to put just like one layer of thread back there. And you can see I've got a bit of a hump right here and back here. I'm going to try and reduce that with some thread wraps to kind of ramp that up before the lead. And then I'm going to go back over my lead. I'm going to try to ramp up back behind like I did up front. Get it close enough. Then I'm going to let my, my thread hang right over where the barb would be. Then I'm going to grab my dubbing, and like I said, this is probably the biggest challenge, and I think you'll see if you try to put on, now this doesn't look like much, but that's about 3 times more than you want to start with. So I'm gonna feather that stuff out so that it's almost kind of like transparent. I've got enough in that one wad that will probably do most of the whole fly. And I'm going to spread that out, and you can tell that, if I can get the wind to quit blowing in here, I don't have much at all on there. It's pretty transparent. Now I'm going to be a little bit handicapped with space here, courtesy of this camera. And I'm going to lay that on my thread. I'm going to moisten my first finger and my thumb just a little bit, and then I'm going to twist that counterclockwise. You see how fine my dubbing thread is right here? This is especially important when you're trying to get the back end and the front end started. This fly should taper from the back to the middle, and then from the middle to the front.
Zoom back.
Okay. Move it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, once you have that on your thread, notice I've got a big gap from where my dubbing starts to where I want to start wrapping. So if you will lay your fingers on all that and just try to slide the whole shebang up, and then I'm going to have, the camera's always in the way. I'm going to start back here, and that very fine wraps that I have, that's where I want it especially fine. And as I go forward, it's got on my hook, so I'm going to have to fix that without stabbing myself. And as I go forward, notice it's getting bigger in the middle. You can always put more dubbing on, but if you get too much on, you're going to play havoc trying to get it off. So I'm going to build up that middle pretty good here. And you can see I've got a pretty tapered back, and because I could not have access to a lot of thread, I'm going to do another little bitty dab here. I'm going to see how much I need to finish it up. And notice I'm making this amount very, very small because I want to end up here with a nice tapered. It's going to take me several applications here to have enough to finish up this pattern. But your challenge, I just about guarantee your challenge is going to be getting way too much dubbing on your thread. And I'm going to spread this out a little bit more. Try to get that on my thread. You can tell, I hope you can tell, that the amount on my thread is very thin. If you have more than that on your thread, then, and I've got a pretty good taper going here. Because of this camera, I'm going to have to do it in hitches. So I'm going to need a little bit more to finish this out. And I'm getting pretty close to the end, so I want to make sure that I have a very small amount on my thread. Got to bulk that up just a little bit right in there, and now if it starts getting, you can tell if it comes unwrapped on your thread, you can just pull it down and get it tightened back up again. And this is like the, fourth application of dubbing I put on here. And I'm putting on just a small amount. If I didn't have to work around this camera, I would have been done by now. But I've got that way down. I'm going to slide that back up. And I probably got a little bit more than I need on there, so I'm going to stretch that out. And I'm going to take that right down to just behind the eye. And I did a better job at the back end of this fly than the front end. Now on this one, a head is not that important. So I'm going to just tie my thread off right behind the eye. Get 3 or 4 wraps in there. And then I'm going to whip finish it to finish it off. How many of you have had a chance to use the whip finish tutorial that Joe put on on YouTube? If you can get close to it and just do it
several times, I don't know if it's right or not.
Well, he doesn't do it exactly like I do it, but I found it a really good example. Now, I'm going to focus in on this thing, get it up a little bit closer. Now, you know, I've got maybe a little bit too much taper at the back of the fly and maybe not quite enough at the front. But you can see how all those little fibers kind of stick out. If you want it a little buggier, you can kind of tweak this stuff. If you have something that sticks out more than you want, you can always trim it. And the whole exercise is to get you used to dubbing.